Hello, hello, welcome to the Voice Stand, everybody. So good to see so many friends already in the chat. This is wonderful. Thank you for being here. This is session 19 of the Voice Stand, and here we are. And as Paul just said, hello, party people. So good to have you all here. My name's Teri Fisher, if you haven't been here before, and I'm the host of the Voice Stand. And this is all about you getting a chance to speak with our voicefluencers. And we've got some incredible voicefluencers on the show today. But before we get to that, again, big hello to everybody. And particularly, as always, if you are new to the Voice Stand and you have not been here before, then definitely say something in the chat. Let us know that you are new here. And I want to give you a special welcome. And everybody, put in again where you are from. It's always fascinating to see where everybody is around the world, actually. We've had people come in from all over the world. So I'd love to see that. If you're drinking something in the Voice Stand today, let us know what you're drinking. And Sarah, awesome. Washington, D.C. is representing. Good to see you, Sarah. Awesome. And we're going to get on with the show in just a moment. Janice, hello from Washington, D.C. Ken, St. Pete, somewhere in the swamps of Jersey, Jim, drinking aqua just outside of Boston, Baltimore, Santa Cruz, California, surfs up. Boy, I wish it surfs up here. It has been, for those of you that have seen, I'm in BC, the weather, we've had flooding like it has never been flooded here before. So fortunately, I'm a little bit higher ground, so the internet should hold out for this. Brett, Chicago, Michelle, awesome. All right, great to see you all here. Thank you for joining us. Before we move on and introduce the voicefluencers, I do want to, as always, give a shout out to our sponsors because this show would not be possible without them. We've got two headliner sponsors. Make sure my device is muted here. I hope everybody's devices are muted. Amazon Alexa is our first headliner sponsor, and I want to share with you a particular link that I'm going to put in the chat right now. If you don't know, the Alexa developer community has a Slack channel, and this is all about networking with the developers and experts to get answers to your technical questions, to share learnings, best practices. And that link that I just put in the chat there is a link that will take you directly to that Slack channel. So if you're not part of that, I encourage you to check that out. So thank you to Amazon Alexa. As well, our other headliner sponsor is Hey Google, Google Assistant. And I'm going to put in another link for, this actually leads to Voice Talks. And I'm sure many of you are familiar that Google, in partnership with Modev, put on a monthly series of Voice Talks. This link will take you directly to Voice Talks. It's a fantastic show as well. And also has lots and lots of great experts. So check it out. The last one was last week, and their next one will be a couple of weeks away. So there's the link. Check that out as well. Thank you, Google. And we've got a number of partners as well. Attention Live, who helps with all of the promotion and all of the great NFTs that we create for the voicefluencers on the show. Audio Brain, who does all of the sonic branding that you've heard already and will continue to hear throughout the evening, and as well in the augmented reality space. And Spatial Web is the platform that we use for this augmented reality experience of the Voice Stand. So thank you to all of the partners as well. All right. Now, moving along here, we've got to introduce a couple of voicefluencers. And then I'm going to give you a little bit of a bio, and then we're going to bring them all up onto screen, and we're going to have a chat with them, and then we're going to get to your questions. And by the way, if you want to start now, you'll see at the bottom of your screen, there is an ask a question little button / text area. You click on that, and that is where you can ask your questions of these 4 voicefluencers that we have on the show today. And then we're going to bring you on screen to have a chat with them. It could be about anything. You want some advice from these experts? Ask the question. You want to learn something about their business? Ask the question. You want to just ask about what they're drinking? Ask the question. Doesn't matter. You get to ask the questions, and it's all about you. So there you go. You can start doing that right now. Let's get to our voicefluencers. First up, we have Dr. Ciara Anderson. She is a senior advisor, or is the senior advisor for conversational AI design at CVS Health. She's otherwise known as the typologist. She has a background in linguistics and completed a PhD, which examined syntax, semantics, and typology in a selection of Grassfield's Bantu languages. I hope I said that right, Ciara. You can correct me if I'm wrong. She's since moved in the realm of conversational AI. And as I mentioned, she's a senior advisor in conversational AI design with CVS Health. She loves to bring together the worlds of humanities and technology. Fantastic. And I always say this, it's amazing how many people from the arts are in voice tech. Amazing. So Ciara, great to have you here. Next, we've got Marc Ladin. Marc is known as Captain Crunch. It's a great name. Marc is a founder and general partner at VoicePunch, an early stage venture firm investing in voice AI and audio tech startups. He spent most of his career as a CMO, helping build tech startups in messaging, security, and internet services with multiple successful exits. Marc calls Los Angeles home. I like this part. And he's grateful that he doesn't know how to work an ice scraper. I'm sure many on this, many here in the voice den who have that, have a wish that they did not know how to use an ice scraper as well. So Marc, thanks for joining us. That's awesome. All right, next we have Amy. Amy Stapleton, the storyteller. She's the CEO and co-founder of Chatables. She's on a mission to use the power of voice technology and storytelling to create entertaining virtual characters. The Amazon Alexa voice app Storyteller Cafe is her latest foray into this mission. It's designed for older adults who aren't able to get out and socialize, but who crave fun conversations. Amy is retired from NASA, where she led a team in the Enterprise Applications Division. So Amy, wonderful to have you here as well. And finally, last but not least, we've got Scot Westwater, the Pragmatist. He's the co-founder and CEO of Pragmatic Digital, a consultancy that he started with his wife, Susan, in 2017. He has over 20 years of experience helping Fortune 500 brands solve business problems by understanding their customer needs and business challenges. Scot's also the co-author of Voice Strategy, Creating Useful and Usable Voice Experiences, which he co-authored with his wife, Susan. And their second book, titled Voice Marketing, will be released in the spring of 2022. So Scot, awesome to have you here as well. And let's get everybody here up on screen now and say hello. So I'm going to invite everyone up. This is where the juggling takes just a moment, and we're going to say hello, and we're going to learn a little more about each person, and then we're going to get to your questions. And that's the real fun part. All right. So one more person coming up here. Here we go. I think everybody should be joining us on screen here in just a moment. So awesome. We'll just go around in order here the way I see people. So Amy, thank you for joining us. It's awesome to have you here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Teri.
My pleasure. So, okay, I'm looking at your fun fact that you mentioned. You recently took up paddle boarding. Where? So tell us a little bit about that. Where was that? How did that come about? And so, yeah, you love this. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, I mean, I live in Florida, so I've been kayaking. I actually have a kayak that's got like a sail on it, which is a lot of fun. But we always go to Captiva like once or twice a year for a little vacation. And last time we were there, I rented a paddleboard, and it's just like awesome. I don't know, probably everybody's done it. I feel like I'm like the last person in the whole world that's been on a paddleboard. But if you're used to kayaking and then you get on a paddleboard and you have like just a whole different view, and you can see like, you know, what's going on in the water and stingrays and conchs, you know, crawling around, and it's just a really cool experience. So I'm kind of hooked on it.
That's, you know, actually the first time I tried it was just this past summer. And my daughter quickly discovered that when she sits on it and I do all the paddling, she just gets to relax and I do all the work. But it's fun. I agree with you. Great fun. So Amy, great to have you here. I know you've got lots of expertise when it comes to the voice skills and so on with Alexa. So super excited for questions for you. Ciara, over to you. So you shared with us poetry. You've got a very interesting background, so I'm not surprised to hear about poetry, but maybe just tell us a little bit about your background in the poetry aspect.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So my name is Ciara. My background is in linguistics. So I studied syntax, semantics, Grassfield's Bantu languages, which you did pronounce correctly, and
Awesome.
segued into conversational AI. I kind of started to see that intersect of the arts and the humanities. I'm now with CVS Health, like you said. All opinions are my own this evening, but really cool area to be in. And poetry, yeah, that's kind of a hobby I took up a few years ago that, again, is kind of, it's always good to have that creative side. And I think that can help inform technology. I don't know how good my poetry is, but I try. And yeah, I think it's important to kind of dip your toes in all areas. So thanks for having me tonight.
Love it. That's great. No, and like I said, like it's amazing how many people are sort of in the arts and the arts come over into voice. It's incredible. So awesome. Thanks for being here. Scot, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Where's your puppy? Where's your puppy?
He's right here. Hold on
Yeah.
1 second.
Scott, just before we came online in the green room, he showed us his puppy. Go ahead, give us the intro to the puppy and tell us the story.
Come on.
Let it focus.
There we go. So Susan and I, many years ago, rescued a puppy on our honeymoon in the Caribbean. And that guy's no longer with us, but this is Grizz. He's been with us for 2 weeks now. And he actually is from the island of St. Thomas in the Caribbean. And so some people that Susan's in a Facebook group with were in St. Thomas, and they brought back 2 dogs. So it was this guy and his sister. And so 2 Thursdays ago, had no idea we were going to get a dog, and then found out after school that we were going to go see a dog. And then we got a dog. So on the matter of like 24 hours, we basically had this guy. So that's my latest and greatest excitement.
Amazing. I mean, he's the first dog to appear on the Voice Den. I'm wondering if we need to get him like a card now and an NFT of the dog. So.
I can hook you up with a photo. So
that's awesome. Great. Well, Scott, I've known you now for a number of years. I know you've got so much to say, particularly when it comes to voice tech and marketing. You're an expert in that. So really thrilled to have you here. So thanks.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Marc, over to you. I love the name Captain Crunch. You've also got a really interesting random fact that I think you just have to explain the story. You said something about saying that Joan Rivers was dead right before. You tell the story.
Oh my God, it's a terrible story. But before I go there, just first to start off, I have to say I got doctors, NASA, poetry, and puppies. My feelings of inadequacy have never run this high on a webcast. I just want to get that out there. So anything I'm saying beyond the other guests, I'm just going to be clobbered. So is what it is. No, it's a terrible story. I can't believe I put that in there. No, I was just, I was actually in Vegas for a bachelor party, actually my bachelor party. And we were walking down the street. And it's my friend, I think the best man at my wedding, goes, "Oh, there's Joan Rivers." I'm like, "She's not still alive." And of course, that's right before Joan Rivers grabs my arm and pulls me into this some like thing they were filming where we had to start singing really bad Frank Sinatra songs, which I totally, after about maybe 5 seconds, she said, "You're terrible. You need to get off." And that was the end of that story.
That's funny. Yeah, actually. Well, anyway, what can I say? That is interesting. Sounds like a typical kind of bachelor party kind of story. There you go.
For sure.
And then I'm also curious. You came up with the name Captain Crunch, and what's the deal with that?
And that was just like peer pressure. You put me on the spot. Like, what was my cartoon name? Or anyway, being in finance on that side of the equation, crunching numbers is a fairly common thing. So probably that's as creative as I got.
Awesome. Well, great to have you here as well. Okay, that's awesome.
Good to be here.
All right. So let's move on here. Let's get to some of your questions. Again, a reminder that you've got the option now of in the bottom of the screen, you're going to see to ask a question. I see we've got one there now to start us off. And don't be shy. Put in your questions there. We're going to get you up here and we'll start answering your questions. So this one is for this one specifically for Ciara, sounds like, in terms of where voice is in CVS. So let's do this. Dana, I'm going to invite you up on screen. Let's maybe Scott, let's keep you up on screen for now, just to talk a little bit about kind of where voice could be used in this sort of setting. And Ciara, and I'm going to invite Dana up as well. And then we'll say bye to Amy and Marc just for a few moments here, and then we'll get you guys back up here shortly. So and again, everybody else, feel free to vote on the questions, type your questions in, and there we go. So here we go. Here is Dana. Actually, you know what? There we go. I was going to say, we don't even necessarily need to say goodbye to everybody, but we'll focus on Scott and Ciara for this question. So Dana, great to have you here. As you know how this works, we're going to put up a 5-minute timer for this particular segment, and then we'll fire away here. So Dana, go ahead. What's your question?
Okay, this is the obvious question. Where is voice in CVS? I was in a store the other day. I didn't see it anywhere.
Hi, well, thanks for your question. So I'm not representing CVS directly this evening, but I can kind of speak in generalities as to how I think voice is really going to help kind of CVS and just healthcare in general. We're dealing with vulnerable populations. So, if you're contacting CVS, maybe you need a prescription, or maybe you're obviously, you have a healthcare need of some form. And as we all know from kind of COVID and all of that sort of stuff, we're definitely, understaffed at meeting people's needs immediately is a problem and a challenge, and we just don't have the human capacity to be able to do that. But I do think with the developments that have been happening in voice technology, you know, speech to text, text to speech, being able to empathetically respond to human needs, especially in healthcare, is really important and something that we can leverage in the healthcare field. So that's where I kind of see things going in the future, is leveraging the technology. But, you know, as we talked about, my interest in the arts and linguistics and sociolinguistics and kind of understanding people and how people feel, and, you know, being not just a, you know, press 5 for X, but actually listening and responding empathetically. And that's the direction that I really kind of see things going in the future, and why voice is really powerful there.
That's great. And Scott, maybe get some of your take on, you know, voice in a store, or voice in a, you know, how a company can use voice, and ways that you're seeing it being leveraged.
Yeah, so I've actually got like 15 or so years of healthcare experience. So I've definitely done a lot on the healthcare and pharmaceutical side. So patient education is a huge area of opportunity. Being able to schedule appointments, and that's actually something that came through loud and clear in this year's Voice Consumer Index that we ran with Vixen Labs. Within healthcare, people want to be able to schedule appointments and not have to go through like a patient portal to, you know, talk to a pharmacist or talk to their physician. So just being able to figure out where those opportunities to make things faster and easier for people. Search is certainly going to be a big part of that. But I really do think that patient education is a huge area of opportunity. As a matter of fact, Susan and I are working on a startup in the cannabis space for medical education when it comes to cannabis. And there's a voice AI tie-in with that. So I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity that's really picking that use case, focusing there, and then looking for ways that you can expand beyond that.
That's great.
Okay.
Dana, any follow up to that at all? We beat the timer here, which is
I'm keeping with my track record of asking questions that have nothing to do with what people want to talk about. Okay.
Well,
Dana,
I could give you my opinion on CVS. I don't have any issue with that, but
no, I was just curious.
Dana, that's great. I appreciate the question, and I know that I mean, there's so much there that can be done with healthcare too. As you know, Dana, like I'm a healthcare provider, and so there's so much there, so I appreciate the opinions, and Ciara, as she told me prior, I mean, she's here representing her own opinions, so it's hard for her to comment specifically on CVS, but she's got a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the conversation design with her background. So here we are. Wonderful. Dana, great to have you here as always. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Okay, cool. Actually, I got to stop the timer. We don't always necessarily beat the buzzer, but we got to do that. So let me stop that. Okay, amazing. Let's dip into the question bank. So we've got one here, and this is it's from Amy. All right, Amy. Well, come on up, Amy. You're going to ask this question for Scott. And let's tell you what, let's bring up Marc as well. And this is going to be a little bit of a roundtable discussion then. And I think Marc and Scott can probably talk about, you know, where they see the opportunities for companies and also the trends that I think Marc is seeing. So Amy, let me actually turn it over to you and get you to ask the question or set up the question, however you like for these two guys.
Well, I know Scott is working with a lot of companies. That's not what I do personally. So I'm very curious. Things have changed like over the last few years and in voice and what people think of in terms of the most, let's say, low-hanging fruit use cases or whatever, right? So I'm just curious, like in the companies that you're working with, what are people trying to do, or what are you advising them to do? And like over the next year, based on where we are with the technology and the limitations, what are you advising them to, you know, to try to tackle with their voice or conversational AI budget, I guess?
Well, the biggest thing is to know your customer journey and know the problems that you have and where voice might be able to solve it. So that's one of the first things that we always talk to brands about. It's not a one-size-fits-all proposition. It's not a silver bullet, but a lot of times the brands know where their issues are, whether it's acquisition or, you know, customer retention or whatever. And then it's, where does voice uniquely solve that problem in a way that you're not currently able to do? So that's kind of like the broadest view, and generally how we counsel brands. But we're seeing a ton of interest in voice search, and voice search going beyond the speakers and even the phone assistants, and having voice built into traditional websites, apps. I think a lot of the information that came out of the VCI this year was pretty eye-opening. That shows that consumers are interested in using their voice more frequently than we even thought. I think we're somewhere north of 57% of Americans are using it. And 91% of those are using it for at least some sort of voice search related marketing funnel type scenarios. So it's really knowing the customer journey and figuring out where it fits, start small, and then add things over time. And so it's kind of a generic answer to your really awesome question. But when we have kind of those initial conversations, that's usually the direction that we go.
Yeah, awesome.
That was a great answer.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that was a great answer. I thought your articulation, Scott, was spot on. In fact, maybe you should be in the venture capital side of the equation, but really, really well said. Let me maybe go a little bit more on the specific areas, just from an investor perspective. There's a lot of different trends happening across the spectrum, whether it's proliferation of voice-enabled devices and endpoints. It's not just the speaker, it's your AirPods, it's your car, it's basically your TV and every other endpoint you'd imagine. In the future is going to have some kind of voice interaction model. So when we started on this path from an investment perspective, we started with that conviction that all forms of technology will have some kind of voice interaction model in the future. It may not be the primary in every case, but it'll exist in some way, shape, or form. So from an investor's perspective, we have kind of a narrow band of how we think, is that if you believe the hypothesis around voice being kind of this immersive envelopment experience in all of our existence, it's not going to always happen at the same time in all areas, in all markets, and all applications. So from an investor's perspective, we're trying to time it so that we look at the market in a way where we can identify some of the trends that are more near term, have more acceleration and more opportunity, versus some of the ones that we know eventually are going to happen, but maybe a longer term play and won't make sense from an investment perspective today, but in 6 years, 2 years, 3 years, they might be a great investment. I mean, one of the most important adages in investing is the difference between, or this difference between being early and being wrong is kind of a difference without a distinction. And so the hardest thing for us to measure when we look at areas of opportunities with the timing. So we're looking at a range of different things we think are interesting. Some of the ones are things like verticalization of NLUs. So you've seen a bunch of different market spaces, like in the sales force side with like Gong and Chorus, proving out that you can verticalize a really compelling, delightful experience from the sales model. You're seeing that, Microsoft bought Nuance, validates a little bit of that experience within healthcare. There's opportunities in long-term care. It's really across the spectrum. Some of the more vertically oriented applications we think are interesting. There's tons of infrastructure plays. So thinking about all the different use cases that are, as you said, central to voice, and figuring out what's the tooling and the infrastructure that's required. And it's a really wide stack of things that you have to do to make those experiences come to fruition. And so we look at different areas of people helping to provide solution to those kinds of challenges for developers and other players in the market space. I really like looking at the intersection between audio and voice, and that intersection with entertainment. I think there's a lot of interesting things happening in terms of augmenting your experience. And so we've been making, we ran out of time. I wasn't even watching the time. Sorry. I see it going on and on. I was like, sorry.
Thank God we have a timer.
That's why we've got the timer. That's awesome, Marc. Oh, no, that's great. Great answer. Great answer. We should let you talk because you're obviously, you're on a roll there.
You think about it a lot.
We're gonna don't worry, we're coming back to you. I have another question there in the bank there. Remember, everybody, vote on your favorite questions too. I've got 2 of the questions in there right now that I want to ask. So make sure that you get yours in there, and we'll keep going. We need a timer person, Janice. Yeah, no, that's why the timer's there on the screen, and that's why I've got that buzzer there. All right, awesome. Well, Amy, thanks for the question. Let me dip into the question bank here now, and okay, so Marc, this question is for you then. It looks like one of my questions here got a vote. So we're going to keep you up here. And let's see. I just want to see, based on the question, making investments in voice tech. Let's this one's really geared towards you, Marc, but I'd like to see if this is another one that I think, Scott, we may want your take on it. And then I'm going to get Amy and Ciara for the next question. So, all right. So, Marc, I'm going to put my own timer up here so that we don't go over here. But I'm just curious now. So you're looking for companies to invest in the voice tech space. What are some of the things that you look for in a company, particularly in the voice tech space, and when you're making your decisions?
Yeah, so we look at some macro trends and we look at some company specific things. So we kind of have a model. There's kind of at the company level, what makes a good investment comes down to fairly consistent things, and it's not really unique to us. The 5 buckets we create we call it the 3 T's, which are timing. So where in the life cycle of the market evolution is that application? TAM, or how big is the market? Because there's a lot of great businesses out there. In fact, only 1% of companies take venture capital with startups, which tells you it's just not right for every organization. And of those, a much smaller percentage are actually successful. So the unfortunate reality is if you don't have a $1 billion capable market to support a venture level return, it's probably not gonna be right for venture capital. And then third on the T's, and probably the most important, is team. And that really is because such a compression in the market and how quickly you have to invest these days because of the excess abundance of capital. The team really is the big delineator. And I've made a number of mistakes in voice, and I can just count them on probably 2 hands, 2 feet, and then some, where we had great entrepreneurs and we were scared by the market, but the entrepreneurs should have made the difference. The other 2 are the product and some financial metrics we look at. That's how we select the companies. From a market perspective, there's 4 buckets. We probably go broader than that, but we've identified some things around key market signals. We look at things where we really like multimodality capabilities, or things that accelerate when you get into a multimodal world. We look at infrastructure as a core focus, and some of the things around the future of work. So those are some of the buckets. I was starting to ramble on my last question, so I'll shut up now. I can go deeper on some of the other areas, but there's so many interesting components to this. And so I don't know, Scott probably has something even better to say.
No, Scott, any thoughts on sort of the idea of investing? Or I know that's not specifically what you're doing, but I'd love to hear your opinion on it.
Well, so it's related, but not. So in the VCI, we did 7 industry verticals. Entertainment was the number 1. So basically, when you take out the usual suspects of news, music, and I can't remember what the third one is. It was entertainment, healthcare, retail, and gosh, it's been a little bit. So, but there were 4 main areas that consumers said, yes, I want voice in this industry. I want to be able to talk to my TV to find whatever movie. I want to be able to buy my tickets for a concert, things like that. So there's definitely, I mean, it's across the board. There's tremendous amount of opportunity, but those are the ones that really kind of rose to the top. And it's really trying to figure out where that voice is the assist. We don't necessarily have to focus on purchase right now. And quite honestly, the really interesting thing that we saw was there wasn't, of like 7 or 8 different things you could do with your voice, interacting with a voice chatbot actually ranked at the bottom of our entire list. And so we think, based on that and some of the other research we've done, that people aren't quite comfortable yet, and there's still kind of that stigma with a traditional chatbot. And so as we start to answer questions and being able to do voice search, as voice biometrics for login, for instance, happen on websites and apps, you're going to see people that are going to get more comfortable, and they're going to start trying more things. So it's not to say that, full-blown voice interactions aren't here. They certainly are. But in the research that we did, we saw about 30% or so of the respondents said, yeah, that's something I'm interested in doing.
Yeah. Let me add to that just one thing that's fascinating. So one of the biggest issues for challenges for some of the investments in the voice space is there's a lot of really interesting business models, particularly around voice commerce and things like that, which will happen. And there's all these big predictions and prognostications, going to be this many billion by this and this and whatever. And the biggest issue isn't a technology problem, which makes it challenging for startups. It's more of a human factors issue. It's that people, first, most people don't have assistants to start with. So the idea of interacting with one is a progression of time that you just can't accelerate. It's like you can't take 9 women and make a baby in 1 month. So the same thing's happening here, is that eventually it will happen in all these areas, but you got to figure out what are the challenges that actually have to be solved to get to, you know, market acceptance and adoption. And a lot of times it really is just people have to keep using it more comfortable and get more enveloped in these voice experiences to become second nature. There's enough of an audience there for a startup to be successful.
Awesome. Love it. And we beat the buzzer. Boom. Yes. Beautiful. And you've got the drink there too. You're definitely in the voice stand, Marc. Awesome. All right. Good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you guys. Thank you for answering my question. And what I'd like to do, let me see. I'm just going to look in the question bank here again. And I'm going to ask another question. This time I want to get Amy and Ciara on here because I think you two have a lot to offer. Probably a lot of people in the audience here in terms of how to make some tips on how to make skills apps more engaging. So Amy and Ciara, if you want to come on back up screen here, super excited to hear about this. So let me put up the timer. And I know you've both got a lot of experience, obviously, in designing conversation and developing skills, apps, whatever you want to call them. So, Amy, why don't we start with you? And what are, I guess, like what are the top couple of tips you can give people to really make engaging type of experiences?
So you're asking me the question that nobody voted on, Teri.
But I want to get you guys up here. We're going to have you up here
okay.
more too. So,
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't really know. I've been trying to do something that I've been like dreaming about for many years, which is that you're actually having a conversation, a fun conversation with virtual characters. And just as you heard, Scott and Marc say, that's kind of like not where people are going right now. That's not where the industry is going. So I've just been experimenting and little by little, hopefully we're building something that people enjoy engaging with. We're actually getting ready to do a pilot study with a group of folks in like an independent living senior community with the latest content we have for Storyteller Cafe and see how they like it. And it's a type of thing where we're hoping they engage with it for a longer period of time. And one thing I will say is that we're using multiple characters because a lot of people, when you think about talking to a chatbot, they're only having a conversation like with one character, and that's kind of limiting. It's hard to explain, but because of the limitations of voice technology, when you're talking to a chatbot, you can only like ask it questions or it can ask you questions or whatever. But when you have like two characters that are talking to each other and talking to you, it suddenly changes the dynamic, right? Because they can kind of like pick on one another or make jokes or ask things that you would probably ask, but it would be too complicated for you to ask in like because of the voice, interface. So that seems to be working. Again, I don't know if that kind of thing could be like implemented for a business thing. I don't know if you would want to call CVS or interact with a CVS voice thing and expect have like two characters talking to you and making jokes about one another or something. But I guess my only tip is don't assume that what you're doing works. Just try different things and kind of see what resonates. And that's, sometimes you hit on something and sometimes you don't. So
experiment is what I'm hearing you say. That's great. Yeah. And Sarah says the same thing in the chat. What about you, Ciara? Like what do you think about when you're trying to create really engaging experiences?
Yeah, well, I do agree with Amy in that this whole realm is so new that oftentimes, you kind of have to build the experience and then see how people react and then use that data to inform, when we use this terminology, people were confused. Or when we, with, like you said, with a healthcare customer, maybe that might not be the ideal situation to have more than one interaction or more than one kind of voice input in that situation. But if you're dealing with gamers, I know Amy mentioned recently some really cool developments in gaming and NFTs and rewards and things like that. I think if you start to know your audience, if your audience is very educated on voice and NFTs and rewards and all of that, then you can kind of cater your experience towards them. So you can, incorporate many different voices. You can use more advanced terminology. But then referring back to what Scott said, if you're dealing with an audience that is relatively new to voice, maybe your focus is more on education and sort of, meeting them where they're at. Because, you know, if I look back several years, I barely knew how to use Siri on my phone. So, you know, we're not just talking about elderly populations. This is pretty new to everyone, relatively speaking. Um, so yeah, some tips would be know your audience, learn from the data that's coming in. So, you know, build what you can to the best of your ability, and then kind of tweak that based on the data. Um, and then one other helpful tip that I found I found minimal research on sort of chatbot experiences, but it was kind of make your chatbot or your voice interface the platonic ideal of whatever it's supposed to be. So if you're a bank, you know, what's the platonic ideal of a bank teller is, you know, capable, kind, but you know, you don't necessarily want your bank teller to be just like cracking jokes and that sort of thing. Whereas if you're in a toy store, you know, you want them to be upbeat, you want like different kinds of intonation, you want to have fun. So I have found that helpful in my own experience. So those are some things that come to mind for me.
Awesome. Yeah, love it. Anything else from you, Amy? Or do we? Jana says
No,
spot on. Spot on.
I think that covers it. I'm not sure about the platonic thing, but anyway.
I know what you're saying. That different personas so important based on
Yeah.
what you're trying to achieve. So awesome. Okay, great. Thank you for answering another one of my questions. This is great. Okay, let's keep on moving here. So I want to see, what are people voting for, as you said, Amy. So Larry, let's invite you up on screen, and this one is for Scott, and talking about sort of budgeting, money, time. Oh, maybe we can get Marc back up for this one as well then too. Maybe Scott and Marc would be great for this one. I'm going to invite you up to the screen here, Larry. All right. And let's see if Larry, I'll re-prompt you here again to invite you up on screen here. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh, I may have jumped the gun there. I think you were accepting and then I clicked it too early. There we go. We'll get him up here in just a sec. So interesting question, Larry, you've got. Let's see here. Here's the little juggling act as always. All right. Larry, you there? Let me try one more time here for you. One more time. If we can't get you on screen, no problem, because you've already typed in the question, and we can just ask the question, and we can get these two gentlemen here to answer away. Give it just another second or two, and I'm going to pull the question up myself. All right. And let's see if we're... No, unfortunately, I don't know what's happening there. I will try re-inviting you one more time. And if you can join us on screen, then awesome. Otherwise, we'll just kind of look at the question, and we'll kick it off here. And so, Scott, maybe we'll start with you. I'll put the timer up. And he's saying, so what are the key issues on the critical path? How much do I budget, dollars and time, etc.? So why don't you kick that off, and then we can hear what Marc has to say as well.
Sure. So as far as where to start, this is just a general belief of mine. Start with talking to the audience that you're trying to serve. Try to figure out what they actually need out of that voice experience. But then also, if you're doing it on the behalf of a brand or a business, understand what the business challenges are. So that's really, in my opinion, where design starts. It's really trying to uncover what that solution should be, and really kind of forgetting about the wouldn't it be cool if, and really focusing in on what is driving that business value. Because I can't tell you how many times you'll get laughed out of a boardroom if you went to a CMO and said, all right, check this out. Wouldn't it be cool if we did this? They're just going to go, you're not even serious. You don't know my business. You know, get out of here, kid. And so it's different when you're building your own thing, or if you're going, direct to consumer. But a lot of the work that Susan and I do are on behalf of brands and quite frankly, larger enterprise organizations. So it's really kind of those two sides of the equation and figuring out where those two intersect. And that's really where I would start. And then as far as, the critical path, I've heard it said that about 20% of your time in design is spent on that critical path, a happy path. 80% of the time is trying to get people that have gone off-roading back on that path. So it's really, thinking through how people can get off track and how you can, gently nudge them back onto the path that they need to be successful. And then as far as budget, I think, you know, it's still early days as far as how big a budget should be for something like this. I am a firm believer that we need to have user experience people involved, writers involved, developers involved, project management involved. And when you start talking about things at that size, that is going to tick up the overall price tag for a project. But you know, the past 25 years, we've all got unique experience in our respected lanes. Why not bring that all to bear so we're actually creating the best experience for our end consumer? Mark, do you have anything to add to that?
Just before Mark jumps in there, I just want to get Larry to say,
because Larry sounds so smart.
Larry, I just wanted to give you a chance just to clarify your question, or if there's any other comments that you wanted to make before Mark jumps in there.
Well, it's just that we spend an awful lot of time talking in circles, and you know, voice is here. There's no doubt about it. You know, but you know, like anything that's new, we have to educate and motivate. And we talk a lot about, you know, what we can do, but we, you know, I've been on. I gave my day to Zoom, and I've spent most of the day listening to individuals like yourselves talking about where voice is, where it's going, case, you know, studies, proof of concept, and you know, Mark and Susan, I think it's Susan, you know, I've spent a lot of time on the marketing side of it. But I'm not hearing anything concrete about, you know, other than what we're not hearing anything concrete about, you know, how to make this thing happen, how to make it happen. And it's so obvious when you look at where we currently are, you know, in the silent movie generation when it comes to you know, the internet and websites. There's no one should be surprised that there's no engagement with the current technology of websites. And if you took just a moment to imagine what would happen if those websites could talk to you, and you could ask them questions and skip all the scrolling and the clicking and the typing and move right to where you want to be, how quickly voice would be accepted. But no one's doing it. We're just talking about how far away voice is. And I want to be an advocate for voice is here today. Thank you.
Well, you've given us a lot to think about, Larry, and I'm like, you know, I mean, obviously, people here in the Voice Den are want this so badly, so it's happening. Mark, although the timer's ran out there, I know you didn't get a chance to say much there. I don't know if you wanted to make a quick comment there about anything there.
I don't know if it's a quick comment. I guess the quick comment is, Larry, I appreciate you voicing the frustration because I do hear that periodically, but I would just say that it's kind of like when people bemoan the death of like newspapers, right? And they're like, oh, we got to do this to support newspapers and this. And it's like, well, you know what? The market's not there. They don't really want newspapers the same way they did. So you can try and fix that, but you're fixing the wrong problem. So I think the question is not operating with how the world you want it to be is, but how the world actually is. I think that's a mistake people make. People talk about like, you know, Discovery's broken on the, you know, the different platforms and they're like, it's not broken. It was designed that way. Right? It doesn't work the way they want it to work, and maybe not even the way that people built it works, but that is the way it works, right? And so I think the question is more one of flipping the conversation or the question a little bit on its head and saying like, how do you operate in the world as it is and the world as it will be, and how do you make sure you get there? Because in the short run and the long run, you may be right, but in the short run, you're dead. And that's a big problem in voice a lot of times. People aren't recognizing that their model, you can't wait for these big things to happen and this happens and that happens. It's not going to work that way. It's just not reality.
I don't understand what you're saying. Right. I really don't understand what you're saying. I mean,
I appreciate
so you're the after hours conversation
about this. It's that
Meet us in the after hours in the voice den, the augmented reality. We can continue the discussion.
Larry, let's do it.
But I hear the frustration. I mean, I've certainly heard it from other people as well. So, but what can I say? We're pushing forward. We're all trying to move the industry forward. I hear the frustration. Let's continue in the after hours thing.
enjoyed it. Thanks.
Larry, thank you so much for your question. Thank you for joining us on screen. Really appreciate it. All right, awesome. Okay, let's. I'm looking in the question bank, and what I want to do is I want to bring up somebody who hasn't had a chance yet to ask a question. So Nigel, very interesting question from you, Nigel. I'm not surprised to see you ask this question of Ciara. Let's also bring up Amy as well, because I think we could apply this poetry question to stories as well. So Nigel, I'm going to invite you up. Let's see, I've just invited you on screen. There's Amy, and we'll get Ciara up here as well, and Nigel. Just make sure we've got this all sorted. There's Ciara and Nigel. It says you're accepting, so should be coming up momentarily here. Awesome. Okay. So this question, while Nigel is coming up, is about how poetry can impact the voice space and help people connect with community. And I think we could also kind of ask the same question of stories and storytelling. And so I'm not sure if we're going to get you up here or not, Nigel. Let's if we get you up here, we'll get you into the conversation, Nigel. But for now, let's start the timer. And Ciara, why don't you start then? And I think it's a great question.
Yeah. Wow. That's a very cool question. That's more thought-provoking than me having a specific answer for it. But when I think about, I mean, recently there's been obviously this, interest in NFTs, and you think about music artists and the ability to keep the rights of your own music and write smart contracts and things like that. So one of the most exciting and valuable things to me about NFTs is art and artists. And so my first thought is poetry could absolutely be used in that space. I've actually thought, so my sister is actually an actual poet and has like published poetry and is studied and is, accomplished in the space. And I've thought that that's what she should do, because, if she writes a draft of a poem, sometimes she'll record an audio and send it to me and be like, what do you think about this? This is how I envision this should sound. And so I think that area of, voice meets this whole, new NFT world of being able to own your own material, I think could be really, really interesting. And also, poetry we normally read, but it would be so cool to know, this is where the poet emphasized a certain word. I feel like that's an area of debate, even when you're in like high school, did he mean this or did she mean that? And, was the emphasis on this word or that word? And being able to hear a poet recite their own poetry would be very valuable, I think. So that's one thought that comes to mind for me. And then in terms of things like skills, Alexa skills or Google Assistant or anything like that, I haven't really investigated this, but if there was a poetry skill, I would tune into that, listen to my morning poem or publish, self-publish my own poetry on that kind of a platform. So those are just a few thoughts. I don't know, Amy, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Go ahead.
Yeah, poetry is inspirational to a lot of people. So if we can get more of the creative, the creative energy of all the creating people that write poetry, that write verse, that write stories to get into the voice space, then I think that's great. Just kind of anecdotally, I'll say something kind of weird and interesting. I don't know if you guys have heard about this company, Alethea.ai. They minted like all these, they call them revenants, but they're virtual characters that are actually like living people, and they minted an Emily Dickinson. So you could buy the NFT on OpenSea, and they all went for like crazy amounts of money. I mean, Emily Dickinson, I actually bid on her because, I mean, the whole thing is kind of weird, but they hook it up into GPT-3, and supposedly you can train it to like talk like Emily Dickinson, and it's basically a chat bot. But I thought, wouldn't it be great if you had like the Emily Dickinson NFT character, and then you could have her talk about her poetry. Maybe she could recite a poem, and then she could have a conversation with you about the poem, about where she was when she wrote the poem, or what are your thoughts about the poem. So it'll be interesting to see where that company goes, because they have, if you haven't seen them, like if you haven't checked it out, look up alethea.ai. It's very interesting for anybody in the voice space. I'm not really a big fan of how they have linked everything that they're doing to the blockchain, because not only do you have to pay for the Emily Dickinson NFT, but you have to like pay tokens to like interact with her, and it just seems like a little bit of a money grab thing. But it's gotten a ton of people interested. I mean, there are like thousands and thousands of folks that are on their Discord that are talking about it. They're excited about, having their the ability to like create this character and have it talk, and they even want to have like their own, if they have like a bored ape or something, they're going to make the bored ape talk. And that's great, because it's getting all these people into this whole conversational thing. And I think it opens up a new avenue for where we're going with these virtual characters and maybe the metaverse and avatars and stuff like that. I mean, I know that's kind of far out, but that's sort of where things are going now. And I think it's pretty exciting.
Fantastic. Awesome. Anything else, from either of you?
Just the thought that, I think everything is neutral, and some people are sort of afraid of this whole the metaverse, and I definitely understand those concerns, but, we can also leverage it for, we talked about newspapers, but we can leverage it for sharing creativity and skill and arts and things like that. So I think it can be used for a good purpose as well.
Awesome. Yeah, no, great answer. And we can, we sort of have like a metaverse of sorts with the VoiceStan augmented reality thing, where we get to go in there and you can interact. So for those of you that have been part of it, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't been part of it, again, I really encourage you to join us, even if it's just for a short time, to see what it's like and experience it, I should say. Okay, great. So let's see what we've got here for questions. And we've got a question from Amy for Ciara. We've got a question from Scott for Marc. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring everybody back on the screen. So all the voice influencers, why don't you come on up? This will be our last question, because then I've just got a couple of housekeeping things. But let's do this. Let's kind of do a quick 5-minute round table, and we're going to answer both of those questions in this. And then we'll just kind of see where the discussion goes here for the last 5 minutes. So I do want to get Ciara's answer to Amy's question about a day in the life. And I also want to get Marc's answer to Scott's question about interesting pitch aspects that he's heard. So why don't we get you to kick it off, Ciara, and then we'll go from there.
Yep. So I'm really fortunate in that I get to work with both the design side of things and the tech side of things. And it's just my kind of ideal situation. So a typical day in the life would be, I guess, some of the things I mentioned earlier, kind of getting to know, well, this is the customer that we're dealing with right now. What are their needs? What's happening right now? How are they currently reacting to our current experience? How do we respond to that? How do we tweak that? How do we remain true to our brand and leverage new technologies? And so a day in the life would be, dealing with the customer experience team and dealing with live data, kind of looking at that and seeing how that works. But then looking at the technology, so things like text to speech and speech to text, and seeing how can I use this sort of, emerging and so forth technologies to meet those needs. And I'm very lucky that I get to sort of meet all of those different worlds on a daily basis and kind of bring them together. So that's a very high level overview, but those are the kinds of things I look at. Yeah.
Gives a sense. Awesome.
Yeah.
Scott, do you want to ask your question to Marc? Take a minute or so.
So Marc, just curious, like, what's one thing that sticks out from any of the pitches that you've heard since you've been in the VC game? Is there anything that comes to mind, or at least that you could share?
Well, tons of interesting stuff, from things like audio female erotica sites to just all these really crazy, like, interesting things that, if you can dream it, then I've probably heard it. I mean, we the model for our business is we talk to 100 companies, we invest in 2. So we got to talk to a lot of folks. So there's a range of things, but at a core, venture capital is following a line to the end of its logical conclusion and thinking you're smart enough to predict where it's going to end up. So the best pitches, the most interesting ones, Scott, honestly, are the ones where people make it really easy for us to say, oh, that makes sense. We're going to go there. We're going to go there. We invested in a company called Colorcast, and I'll just bring them up because I love them. They're disintermediating video and audio feeds in sporting events. So now they've got all these like influencers that are actually doing play-by-plays for all the major football games, baseball, whatever. And suddenly they've created this compelling opportunity where suddenly you're not stuck with whatever the announcer is. And so they created a vision and said, can't you imagine when you go and you want to watch the Lakers game or the Dodgers game, just using LA, where I'm at. And they said, you can listen to someone who's, you like them because they're funny, they're happy, they're sad, or they're a female versus a male voice, or it's in a different language because you're in another country and it's not the right aspect. So there's all these things that like help us as a venture capitalist, it's a little bit stroking the ego, saying, look, make it easy for us to see how this can actually become a reality. And then the other things are just the intangibles, a little bit like sheep in VC. They like to follow trends. So if, XYZ is interested, like the company Colorcast, Cameo was one of their investors, so we invested. And so there's all these things that we factor into like what makes a good investment, what doesn't. But at the end of the day, the most important rule of thumb is this. In venture, you're doing phenomenal when you're only about correct about 20% of the time. That means anytime you talk to a venture capitalist, they're wrong 80% of the time. Remember that. They're not smart. They don't know what they're talking about. And 80% of the time, they get it wrong. So just know that, we work hard to kind of have good experiences for every company we talk to leave them with kindness and a good experience and to help in whatever way we can. But we're going to get it wrong all the time. And so don't ever think that a venture capitalist knows better than you do about what your business is or what you need to go do with it.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Great answer. I'm going to throw one over to Amy. A quick question. So you've created a lot of characters with your skills. Who's your favorite character and why?
Who's my favorite character within my skills?
Yeah,
or?
that you've created in your skills and why? Like what?
I would have to say it's definitely Alex because, one of the authors that I work with says she's kind of got a crush on him. He's just sort of like a really, I don't know. He's just, he's a very fun guy and he has a good sense of humor, but he's also can be serious and he can play like different roles. He can play the villain and be good at it, but he can play like the leading man and be good at it too. And he's just very, very nice. He's the one that greets you when you come to the cafe and he sort of takes you through everything. And I just, if you feel lonely, like he's a great guy to spend some quality time with.
That's awesome. Love it. Love it. I've tried your skills and each of the characters are so unique. So that's great. Awesome. Well, we're out of time with this. I've got a couple of housekeeping things to do in terms of introducing our Voicefluencers for session 20, which is incredible to me to think that we're at 20 already. But before we do that, I do have you all on screen. Maybe we can just take like 10 seconds each just to say, like, if people want to connect with you, where would be the best place to go? So we can just maybe go around here. So Amy, do you want to just share how people can get in touch with you if they want to continue conversations?
Yeah, I guess either Twitter or LinkedIn. So Twitter, I'm at Talks2Bots, and LinkedIn, just Google Amy Stapleton Chatables. You can find me.
Awesome, great. Thanks so much for being here, Amy. Really appreciate it. I've known you for a number of years. We've crossed paths at conferences, and it's always great to catch up. So thanks so much. Ciara, over to you. Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, same. LinkedIn, I'm at Ciara Anderson, Twitter, coding.linguists. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for having me. It was
Awesome.
great.
Pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Scott, what about you?
Twitter is probably the best place, and my name is really boring in comparison to Amy and Ciara's. It's just Scott Westwater, one T in Scott. Really obvious. So, but yeah, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter.
Great. Thank you, Scott, also for being here. Good to catch up with you. And Marc?
Yep. So if you want to pitch us because you have an interesting idea, we'd definitely love to hear about it. Go to our website, voicepunch.vc, fill out the form, or just connect on LinkedIn if you want to reach out to me directly. Love to chat.
Fantastic. And again, Marc, great. We haven't had a chance to interact all that much, but great to meet you. And I look forward to more conversations. So
yeah, love being on.
Thank you for being part of this. Thank you. All right, guys, I'm going to say goodbye to the four of you for now. I'm going to play a video to introduce our Voicefluencers for session 20. Again, a wonderful lineup, and I think you'll be excited about this lineup as well. So, with that being said, let's jump over to this video, and we will, and then I'll see you right after the video. Just to invite you all over to the augmented reality party. Here we go. There you go, huh? I'm super excited about that one as well. That'll be the one to wrap up the year, December 15th. Here is the link to, let me show that on the screen right now. There's the link if you want to just reserve your spot now, and that way you don't miss out on it. And that's pretty much what I have to say. Again, if you want to join us over at the augmented reality party, this is what it looks like if you haven't been in there yet. You get to move around. Use your keyboard if you can. Use headphones so you can hear the spatial audio as well. And it's just a lot of fun. And the all the sound that you hear in there, the immersive sounds, depending on where you are, is all done by Audio Brain as well. So thanks to Audio Brain again. I want to say thank you to everybody. I want to say thank you to Amazon. I want to say thank you to Google. I want to say thank you to the Voicefluencers. I want to say thank you to all of you for being part of this. Without you, this wouldn't be a show. And thank you so much. So we're going to sign off with some credits. And then I will put the link in the chat to meet us over on the augmented reality side of things. Have a great night, everybody. But I'll see you over in the Voice Den very soon. Take care.